right. It is officially holiday season. Love this time of year. Philip and I are celebrating that we can finally start to break out the shackets. This is one of my favorite fashionable items.
You went
Um,
all the way up with the button. What
I
was
know
the
because I'm
top
so cold. I'm trying to stay warm. Um, this is such a crazy, fun, exhausting, rewarding time of year. I feel like the other day I was talking to a pastor and I said, we've officially entered the end of year vortex because there's so much going on, in our personal lives, holidays, families. There's so much going on at church and it's awesome, but it's very easy to get kind of swept up into, the busyness of the season. And then we
Yeah.
get to the end of the year and we just kind of pass out over the finish line. And so we've put together a resource that I'm really excited about, which is it's just a guide to help individuals or teams or staffs as a whole to take some time to reflect at the end of the year and kind of look back. We have our strategic plans, we have goals set for what we want to accomplish in the next season. And as we look ahead to the next year, but there's so much power in taking some time to look back, to see what God has done, to cultivate gratitude, to identify the lessons we can learn from this past season. So that's what we're going to get into today is reflection. But I wanted to ask a little bit of a fun question before we get started is this time of year, end of year, it could be holiday related or, end of year, new year related. Do you have any, I don't know, rituals or traditions or things that you love to do, things that you look forward to do, either you personally or as a family, here at the end of the year? I'll tell you a couple of mine because I actually have several. One is my wife, Kristen, and I, we always watch all the Harry Potter movies in the month of December.
Oh,
We do a December Harry Potter marathon. I know they're not, I guess, officially Christmas movies, but they have become Christmas movies to us. So that's one of ours. Um, and the other thing, which is, I guess, a little more like serious, is I always try to do like a personal solitude retreat at the end of the year where I'll just go get an Airbnb, usually in the mountains for a day or two and just have, some guarded time where I can just spend time with God, reflecting, but also praying and kind of resetting before I head into the new year. So those are a couple of mine. I'm very, very interested to hear maybe what some of yours would be.
does Kristen get a spa solitude retreat because you get your like woods retreat?
Listen, I don't need you giving me suggestions like that.
I think I'll quick. I think the foods, just in general, there are so many foods that I look forward to in this season. And Angela's so good at like making certain meals. Like there's a New Year's Eve meal. No, New Year's Day meal. New Year's Eve is like all appetizers and stuff, and then New Year's Day, before you get started on actually eating healthy again, is like she does like chicken Alfredo, and we set the table. We make the boys dress up, and we just kind of it's like an usher into the new year, and so she's always really good about that, and that's always something I look forward to clearly. And then puzzles, man, it's puzzle season.
You are
Like
a puzzle guy,
everything.
aren't you?
I, I love it. I feel like I'm accomplishing something, but I'm also doing nothing at the same time. So I know it's how I'm wired, guys. I'm sorry.
I don't want my husband to hear about either of your wives because not only does he not go on a solitude retreat or get solitude, but he does not get any gourmet food from me because I'm a terrible cook. Not because I can't cook, but because when I have people over, I can't multitask. I can't talk to people and manage all the dishes and the timing. So something's never going to go in the oven and something's going to burn. So I like going to other people's houses for really good food and watching endless amounts of college football. So that's I grew up in the Southeast. I've lived in most of the SEC states at this point. And so it's just a lot of fun to sit and watch sports and, take 20-minute naps over and over again in the afternoon.
Oh, that's the life right there.
Really two things, two highlights for me. One is, I love kind of unpacking and thinking through the year and I usually take two half days, kind of 2 mornings, and kind of let the year settle in, think about it, and get to sit in the middle of it for a while and then dream about the future. But then I'm kind of feel like I'm ready to kind of, I've taken my coat off, if you will, and now I can relax with the family. So we usually have everybody come to the house for a week or so around Christmas, and right at the last couple of days, everybody's very like, we have I'll call it corny tradition, which we started about 3 or 4 years ago, of we all get the same pajamas on and we just hang out. And my goal is that we don't find anything to do other than just we all pile on the couch or the floor and just spend time together. It's like that one time a year that everybody has permission to just put it all down and just be for a while. So it's a huge thing for me.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing pictures of you in your matching pajamas, Phil. I will expect that as soon as you have it.
Their house is decorated for Christmas from September through January.
Grace loves it. Oh man.
Yes, we have
fully embracing.
Man.
I have
definitely a season.
I have a separate storage facility for the Christmas trees in the house.
That's amazing.
Garage dedicated to Christmas trees.
Awesome. Let's get into this topic of strategic reflection. I feel like this has been so powerful in my personal life. And I'm hoping that this resource will help just facilitate a good reflection process for pastors, leaders, teams here at the end of the year. And Phil, this is something you've, always led and coached our team to do in our personal lives. And I think it's something we do well as a team as well. I just want to ask the basic question first, which is why is this important? Why does reflection matter?
Yeah, I think there's the old phrase, experience is the greatest teacher. And I don't think experience is the greatest teacher. I think it is when it's coupled with reflection, and then the things that come out of reflection are, I would call them gifts that you get to learn from your experience. And it's not only learn, but then put, maybe recalibrate some things, and to make it a better year next year, not from a performance perspective even, but from who you are and kind of the things you want to do in the kingdom.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think, Phil, when we talk about reflection, it's like, and Greg, you even mentioned this as we were starting to develop this resource. It's like sometimes we're so focused on what's next, that it does take somebody or something to force us to stop, take a look back, see what has happened, see what has been done. And I would say the concept of monuments has always been big for Angela and I in our life, and trying to establish something of thus far the Lord has done, therefore he will give us faith and hope that he'll do something like that again in the future. And so without taking those times to actually stop, calm my heart and really just set aside time to look, it's really hard to find what did God do, and where did I see him move, and how is he speaking to us, for the future. So I've just seen the power of it. So it has helped get me motivated, to do it again. And
every time I do these reflection exercises, I'm always shocked at how much I forgot about what's happened over this previous year. And in the speed of life, it's so easy to just move past and keep going and always looking ahead. And there's a lot about that that's great, especially when you're leading an organization, you're trying to build a church. But there's something special about being able to look back and just identify the places where God has moved in our life, God has moved in our church. Christy, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I do. Um, I think the idea of gratitude is such a powerful element related to reflection. How do you see those two things kind of working hand in hand? How can reflection help us to cultivate gratitude?
That's a great question, and I'm going to admit that because I am so action oriented, I'm so achievement and performance, and I'm like a very organized person trying to get through the list all the time.
Mm,
And I can get into reflection sometimes and just get into a mindset of I could have done this better. I could do this better in the future.
Right.
Everybody else around me seems to be doing this better than me. I get into either, looking at my own behavior or looking at how other people are doing and feeling like I could be better. I could work harder. And my reflection turns into a list of things that I wish was better, either about my performance, my leadership, or how we were doing things. And really, the best thing about reflection is to stop and see how far I've come, how far we have come in the past year, and the things that look like successes, and even the things that were hard that God brought us through and made us better in the process. And so I think reflection's more about appreciating your personal growth, how your team has done, the unity you've had, the ways that you've learned, and being present in that, appreciating that, celebrating that, not only in gratitude to God, but in celebrating and having gratitude for all your team has done, to really pursue and be committed to the mission that you're on.
I love that because you're putting it in perspective, not in comparison. You're just saying,
Yeah.
okay, if this is the journey that God has me on, has our team on, has our church on, let's look at that. And because I think sometimes we can just be paralyzed by like, well, we didn't have 1 million baptisms this year, so man, we must not be doing something right, and in reality,
Exactly.
it's saying, let's look at what God has brought us through. And that does, I think that you can't help but well up with gratitude when you actually do put it in the right perspective.
Yeah, and I think
yeah.
perspective, we all know, we've talked about, perspective is probably one of the most powerful things as a leader that you can have. And so if you're going through this process of reflecting on what's already happened, let's just put action over here for a minute. So like the action's already happened and you're now reflecting on it. You could gain a perspective, and I can testify like this happens to me every year. I gain a perspective that adds, no exaggeration, tenfold power to next year. And all I did was reflect and understand, which gained perspective. And perspective is free. So it's like I didn't go make a list of all the things I need to do because I just did it. Meaning, if I don't do that again, I realized I did something repeatedly last year that I just have to stop doing, which is the reverse of an action list. My list is like, stop, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
or one year I discovered like it was a really difficult year. And part of that difficulty was I had set down one of my strengths and I just picked it back up again. It wasn't like, I got to go find a strength. All I did was say, start using that more. It's natural, it's easy. And the next year, some incredible gains happened. All that happened in that space of 4 hours of reflection. I didn't go out and do calisthenics or anything else. I think that's the part I really want people to hear is the investment. It's probably the best investment, not just, oh, that was fun to reflect. Like it's powerful going forward and it's basically free.
And you can do calisthenics too. That could be helpful.
No.
Are there any particular questions or prompts that have been particularly helpful or powerful for you guys as you reflect back on the year? The resource we've put together has 21 questions and it's ordered by, here's kind of personal individual questions you can reflect on. Here's some questions that are related to your team. And then here's questions that are related to your church as a whole. So either any one of those 21, or maybe you have something else that you've used as well. What are some of the prompts or questions that have helped you?
I'm going to go broad first because I think just having, like, sometimes I just sit and I'm like, what do I do? If I don't have a structure or framework, like I tend to spin for a while to try to figure out, okay. And again, I'm an achiever. So I'm like, did I accomplish the goal? Did I meet the task? And so even just having a framework that like walks you through a process, like again, it can be overwhelming to say, okay, I got 21 and I've got to do it with myself and my team and about my church. And how do I get all these people together? And can I, but the idea that saying just be present with it and do what you can in the time that you've got, like that helps me a lot too. Because it does look at my life or my journey from a couple different angles, because I didn't originate the questions either. So it's like, it's like a coach, and a good coach is going to do is they're going to ask you questions that you haven't really thought of. And by processing that, I'm learning it. So I wouldn't say there's one in particular that I'm like specifically drawn to. I like the diversity of questions that have been assigned to me, almost, because I can follow that. I can try those and look back, and it doesn't just lock me into what was good, do it again. It's, to Phil's point, is what drained you and what do you need to stop doing. I think that's always helpful too.
Now there's a question on here about, when times where you experience joy, and what about it brought that joy. And I think that's so helpful to me in busy seasons and busy times, because it helps to remind me joy is different than happiness, joy. And so it's not about an emotional return, but was I able to connect to something missionally, spiritually, and emotionally? And that requires me to actually be present and celebrate and appreciate that thing. And so it's a good reminder to me. Sometimes when something goes well, I'll be honest, my natural response is just relief. Like, man, thank goodness we're done with that, and it it succeeded. And joy is just a different experience than that.
Yeah.
And so just remembering as a busy leader, am I in the moment? Am I present? And am I connected to what's going on in a manner that I could really experience joy, and not just, okay, that thing was accomplished, we got it done. What's the next? Because it really is my tendency naturally to just try to get on to the next responsibility that I have. And so that's a great way to lose your fuel, is just to continue to try to press through everything and not really be connected to the great things that are happening.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I love looking back and kind of trying to figure out what were the times in the year where I felt a lot of joy, where I felt energized, where I felt good, and try to identify patterns and correlations, related to those stretches. Because I think our tendency a lot is to just kind of blame the circumstances around us without looking internally and going, I felt like I was doing great for, that whole month. Well, what was happening in that month, or what was I doing in that? What were my patterns? What were my habits? I was waking up early. I was working out consistently. I was eating good food. Like, all these things can influence and kind of create the conditions for us to have a joyful season. And it's funny, you said the joy one. I was going to go negative and say one of the other questions asked, when were the times that you felt burnout or fatigue? And what did you learn from them? But to me, it's the same idea, is if I can do kind of a post-mortem on my year and go, what were the high points? And what are the patterns I can identify and now be smarter about prioritizing? And flip side, same thing. What were the low points of my year? And what can I learn from that to try to inform how I'm going to live my life daily in the next year? So I love that pattern recognition. Phil, did you have one that comes to mind?
Yeah, and I think this one can be used sometimes if you have a circumstances, and maybe your reflection isn't at the end of the year, maybe you have less time or something. It can be a very specific question or a high level question to ask at the end of the year. It's really kind of the same question inverted, is, what did I spend 80% of my time on that yielded 20% of the results? And then the flip of that is, what did I spend 20% of my time on that yielded 80% of the results? And we know there's not going to be two things that are exactly fitting inverted in that, but it does challenge me to say, what was my focus and where did I spend my time? And those things are the same. They're not the same thing. Meaning, my focus is the things that I concentrated on. My time is how I allocated time to those things.
Yeah.
And so, like, I may be focused on 3 things, one of which I shouldn't have focused on, but the 2 that I should have focused on, I spent 90% of my time on one and 10% on the other. And right before I realized that, I was wondering why the second one is still lying on its back and not doing it. So it's like those things start to become clear, but they all root out of that high level question of like, and almost every year, one of those 2, there's a pretty good, wow, I didn't think, like I thought that did better, but when I look at it, it really didn't. And I realize I spent a lot of time on it. And so do I want to do that again? And if it's a really important thing, maybe it's yes, I need to, but I need to do it in a more effective way, or I need to ask somebody else to focus on that because they're really good at that. And I obviously didn't do well, and I think it feels like a bit of a superpower when you realize I only spent that much time and look what happened. And I think that's also, all this ties back to realizing what God is doing through you and how he's empowering you to use the gifts he gave you. None of this should be, wow, I got some magic. I really just need to, if you come out of this, you should come out confident in Christ, not, man, I'm good. Like I need to just, shape some kind of an award for this process. I want you to feel good about. I want you to feel good about it. But it's like it's recognizing what God did and where you might have been stubborn and not done it or whatever. And so the Holy Spirit plays a huge role in this process. Part of that, the Holy Spirit process is conviction, not condemnation, but conviction. It's like, wow, there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's when Phil gets convicted to take calisthenics off the list.
I have a sign.
Me too.
I have a sign on my desk that says no burpees.
That's awesome. All right, last question. For somebody who's listening to this and they're going, all right, I've never done this before, but you've convinced me. I'm going to do a year-end reflection. I might use this resource, use these prompts to help me reflect back on this season. Give us just some super practical tips on how can somebody approach a reflection exercise like this. Is there a way to think about, the time to put in, where to do it, how to do it, the materials to bring with you, anything like that'll just help us kind of get into the mode where we can reflect well?
Yeah, I think for me, it's, it's fairly basic, but I think some people it's best to do a day. Some people I do 2 mornings because my first morning is very reflective. My second morning is really coming to understandings about those things. And I need a little time in between to process that stuff. But mine is really, I get in a posture of prayer. I pray and get some quiet time. And then I go through my calendar and I go through it first at kind of I literally go through every day, and it doesn't take that long. I just look through every week on the calendar. Then I take it up a level and I look at each week, then I look at each month, and then I kind of zoom out. And I just spend a lot of time looking at and thinking about, oh yeah, I had that thing happen and I had to meet with that person, and it just brings all this stuff up. And then I have a reflective time of processing it. I read through my strengths, my Strengths Finder strengths as a backdrop to go like, okay, I want to see this through that lens. And then the next day I come back and start going through those questions that we said we're going to share. And I go through those questions and I've got the time frame. I've seen what I've done. I've just started to let it get in my heart and get everything else out of my brain. And then I just write down, I ask those questions and I just write an answer. And I try to, as a perfectionist, I try to stay away from like having great answers. It's like nobody
Right.
but God's going to see this. And I just scribble down whatever I'm thinking. And then I kind of, at the end, pray over it and try to see what comes off the page. Obviously
Yeah.
I got to, not to, sound like obligatory, but like I have a Bible in front of me and I'm trying to look at scripture and trying to understand what God would say about some of the stuff that I'm learning through the process, but either frustrated with or don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. The calendar tip is awesome because, like we said, it's so easy to just forget. We have forgotten so much of what happened in our year. So it's starting in a place like that to just surface, the memories and, oh, that happened too. And a couple other things I like to do related to that. One is to go back through the photos on my phone because I'm constantly taking photos. And so they'll give me, little reminders of where I was and what it looked like and what it felt like. And if you're someone who posts on social media, that's another thing you could do as well, is look back through all the things you posted in the past year, and it will remind you of what you were going through and what was happening, when you posted each of those different things. So I love starting with those. I kind of see it like getting all the ingredients on the table, getting all the memories on the table, and then we can begin to process through them.
Yeah. Thinking obviously the resource is so helpful because it does help you from the very beginning of like just setting aside time and a space. But I would encourage you to be honest with yourself. That's probably the hard part. Even what you were saying, Phil, is just like nobody else is gonna read this but God. Like, no, this is just between him and I. There's no faking it. Like, this is where I am. This is how I'm feeling. And then I'd say bring others along. As this resource even zooms out, it's not just a reflection for you, but even your spouse, your family, friends or a mentor, but also your team, is to have people join you in this journey because they're going to see something from a different angle, different perspective. And it may not be the same time that you set aside, might be another time that you build into this, but the last piece is I want to be a student of what I'm learning too. So I would say build your findings into your new year rhythms. So what am I going to start? What am I going to stop? What am I going to keep doing? What am I even going to increase?
great.
And I've found that with certain disciplines or habits, it's like I need to turn it up. But I set the bar low year one, but year two, year three, now it's like, oh man, I'm starting to see the results, or because I've been able to build that into my regular rhythm. Now I can increase it. So
I think
Awesome.
everything you have said is spot on. And a couple of things I think about on the way out of reflection. One is, can I really establish priorities, which is different than a big long list of tasks or improvements, but what few things are really working best, or I could be healthier or better, or relationally I could be better by focusing on a few things. Sometimes less is more.
Mm.
And in the culture we're in right now, it just feels like there are just more and more things you can do to make your health, your productivity, your efficiency, all these things better. And so trying to make sure that things are simple. And I really try to add, just some time to think about the prioritization of my personal relationships, and are those in order? It is my time reflective of the things that are most important in my life. So God, my family, my immediate family, my extended family, my work, my community. And am I putting the energy I need to into the things that are greatest priority relationally?
Awesome.
that's so good. That jogged the thought, is using some categories. So your faith, your family, your friends, your finances, your fitness. Yeah, they all start with F. They have to.
Look at that.
Come on. Come on, guys.
Of course.
But that's so helpful too, because I'm not just reflecting on my work, and I'm not just reflecting on my relationship with God, but I'm really, looking at the whole year, and I would say, man, I've really disengaged with friends this year because of work or because of something else. Like, that's something I need to dial into. I remember one time, and I hope my brother-in-laws aren't listening to this, but I committed to every Tuesday. I'm like, I'm praying for you. I'm texting you. I'm reaching out. And it was good. I did it for a year. and they very rarely texted me back. So I was like, well, all right, sorry guys, not doing that again next year. I still love them. We love each other, but they might laugh at this. We'll see.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I would say this. I would want people to know, sometimes when you do this, you may slow down enough. You will slow down enough. And if you do, you may find some things and realize like it's more than just some things to think about. Like, I've got something pretty serious in my life I need to deal with, whether it's my relationship with my spouse, whether it be my job is ruining my life, or whatever. I have something else going on. It doesn't have to necessarily be a sin or something deep and dark, but it could be my life as I look at it, and I feel like I'm reflecting and dreaming about next year. I don't know how I would ever do any of the things that are in my heart because I'm in this paradigm, whatever that, because our lives are complex. And I would just urge you to say, like, think of it as I've found this unhealthiness. And if you went to the doctor wouldn't go like, yeah, well, just, put that back, put that back in. If it was something that, needed to be cut out, they wouldn't go, well, yeah, just let's leave that in there for a while, see what happens. And I know it's really hard. The easiest thing, it seems like in the moment, is just to, like, well, I'll deal with that later. But you've just agreed with yourself that that's a failed plan. And all you got to do is tell a friend, tell your spouse, tell your counselor, whatever it is. Just tell somebody that you can get it out, and then have people help you with the process of what would that look like to get healthy, whether it be in that area or if it's like a more integrated part of your life. Like, how do you do that? I say that because I've worked with so many people that, after they've crashed, it's like those things were in there for a good bit, and you just keep like taking them out, realizing them, and putting them away. And this process is going to visit those things, I guarantee. It may not be the intent of it, but so just be bold, and all you got to do is speak the words and tell somebody.
Yeah, that's great.
It's awesome. Good word, Phil. Strategic reflection can be so powerful. We've prepared a year-end reflection guide, 21 simple questions that you can work through here at the end of the year. You can get that using the link below or at focus412.com/resources. We hope everybody has wonderful holidays. We hope you end your year well and start the next year on a firm foundation.